rousing conversation for this afternoon. So thank you for coming, Dr. Kingsberg.
Okay, well, it is a pleasure to be here, and I'm going to stand up a little because I think if we're going to talk about sex, we need to be freeform here. And my goal today is not to make sex therapists out of you, not to make experts out of you, although maybe some of you are, but really to give you a sort of a historical perspective on women's sexual health, to guide you into understanding what's normal when it comes to women's sexuality and what's abnormal and what the problems are. And also to sort of, I'm hoping, convince you of the importance of women's sexual health, both in your own sense of your own lives and quality of life, but also in terms of what you do for a living and the importance for your constituents, because sexual health is considered by the WHO to be a basic human right, and I think it's been underserved and underrepresented, primarily because it's sort of a little embarrassing. It seems like it should be in the private sector, but in fact it really is a public policy issue. Okay, so with that said, let me see if I can figure out how these work. I need to thank Boehringer Ingelheim for supporting my being here today. They really have been very helpful in moving forward the idea of women's sexual health. This is who I am again. Now, let me begin with a little historical perspective, because I think it's helpful to understand women's sexual health if you really understand where it came from. And I'm sorry, my back is to you. If we think about it historically, it really has been given very little attention. Some of this can be attributed to modern medical science, which in the 1800s, when it was discovered that female orgasm was not necessary for conception, all of a sudden women's sexuality became demonized. It became inappropriate for women to enjoy sex, to speak about sex. The concept of nymphomania became popular. Women were actually institutionalized if they were discovered to enjoy sex. So that's sort of the historical perspective. If we fast forward to, say, 2008 and 2009, it's still culturally determined what our views of sexual health are for women, but our culture has changed some. So now we have Sex in the City. Anybody see the movie? So we have women's supporting the idea that everybody is supposed to have happy sexual lives. So this puts women in sort of a double bind. You're considered promiscuous if you enjoy sex, and you're considered frigid if you don't. And where is the happy medium? Where are women supposed to know what's normal, what's appropriate, what's healthy, and where do they fit? So what is normal female sexual function? So we think about this in terms of science. Now, if we look at sort of the research and the science of research on sexuality, we think back to Masters and Johnson. They were the two first sort of pioneers to research the physiology of the sexual response. Anybody hear of Masters and Johnson? Okay, so they really, their name is now ubiquitous with sexuality and the concept of the human sexual response cycle. So in the 1960s, they, in their lab, studied the sexual response of both men and women, and they said this is how it works for both men and women, invariably across everybody, that there are 4 distinct phases that everybody experiences, and you first start with excitement, and then you move to plateau, which is that peak. So excitement is sexual arousal. You're thinking about sex. Your body gets aroused. If there's enough stimulation, your body reaches this peak level excitement called plateau, and then it triggers an orgasm, which is that culmination of the sexual response that is sort of the ecstasy experience of pure sexual pleasure, and then, which is actually simply a reflex, and then the body moves into an unstimulated state called resolution over here, okay? That happens for men and women invariably. But what they did say was that although this model in their minds was always 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order, that women had an infinite variety of responses within that model. So that one woman was not the same as the next or the next. So that in this model, what you can see is woman A, B, and C. That's 3, or it could be 3,000, or it could be 3 million. And this could be 3 different women, or the same woman on 3 different occasions. So we move from A, so she moves from excitement to plateau to orgasm. She has a second orgasm and then moves quickly down to an unstimulated state. Woman B, or maybe the same woman on a different occasion, moves from excitement to plateau and she does an orgasm. And guess what? This is normal for women. that women are not 100% orgasmic on every occasion. That would not be the same for men. Men, if they are not orgasmic, if they make it to plateau, then they think they have a problem. They really do. They panic, and it's really uncomfortable for them. But for women, they don't really expect that 100% of the time they're going to be orgasmic. But if this was the same woman on every occasion, that she plateaued but did not reach orgasm, then we would consider her to have an orgasmic disorder. Okay? So women are very variable. So one woman to the next, the same woman over time, infinite variety. And what is so important here is that our culture really hasn't shown women what to expect. So they walk into their doctor's office. First of all, they're not going to bring it up, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And they want to know what's normal because they have no clue. They're certainly not going to ask their mothers. They can barely talk to their friends about it because it is not a topic that we are okay with discussing, so we don't know what's normal. Okay. Now, in the 1970s, two other researchers, Helen Singer Kaplan and Harold Leaf, said this model is lovely, but really it's missing something very important. It's missing desire. It's missing the piece in the brain that is critical to sexual response, particularly in women, but that this really is about physiology and it's more about the genitals, but really we need to think about desire. That desire starts up here and then it moves to the genitals, and that's sort of the sexual response that they came up with, that there's desire, orgasm, and then resolution. Now, in more recent times, we keep getting a little bit more complicated. Another model that's been proposed by Rosemary Basson, an internist in Vancouver, is that women, particularly women as they age, don't follow this linear model of the sexual response. It's not so cut and dried. It's this, 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 and this. In fact, it's a much more complicated and nonlinear, circular, if you will, model. And that in this perspective, what you'll see, excuse me, I'm good, is that you may or may not start with spontaneous sexual drive. That is the interest in being sexual, that desire. But in fact, many women will choose to be sexual, not necessarily because they're sort of hungry for sex, they don't really have that craving, which I'll talk about in a minute, but because they want emotional intimacy. And that they will either seek out being sexual with their partner or be receptive to their partner's initiation, again, not because they're particularly thinking about sex, but because they want that emotional intimacy. And they know that once they have a sexual encounter, it brings them closer to their partner. So with or without drive, they'll engage in sexual stimulation, okay, they'll engage in sexual behavior, and then if the stimulation is appropriate, that is biologically no pain, psychologically they don't end up in an argument or there isn't a knock on the door, mommy, mommy, I need you, that really sort of disrupts the sexual response. But assuming all of that is going okay, then the body gets aroused, okay? And for many women, it's not until her body is aroused that this desire kicks in, okay? So unlike the model that we assume happens, which is desire precedes arousal, for many women, arousal, and this is particularly true for women as we age, arousal precedes desire, and then it's okay. It's sort of the, oh, I was sort of doing the grocery list in my head over here. I wasn't really into it. I was enjoying it, but not really. And only when my body got aroused was there that, oh, sex. This is great. Why was I so hesitant? Why don't we do this more often? And then that sort of drives the cycle. Now, the model that many, many women will relate to, or sort of the analogy that many women relate to when it comes to this, that I don't know about you, but it fits me, is going to the gym. Okay? I have no biologic urge to work out. Okay? My body's not craving it. I'm not thinking about the next time I can get to the gym. I'm not really fantasizing about my Nike shoes. All I know is that once I go to the gym, once I show up, I put my workout clothes on, I get on the treadmill, and once I'm on the treadmill and I've worked up a sweat, at that point, the smile comes on my face, and I say, oh, this feels great. Why am I so hesitant to go to the gym? I'm coming back to the gym tomorrow. And then tomorrow will come, and I'll be tired, or something will distract me. But if somebody said, hey, Sheryl, do you want to go to the gym with me? I could be encouraged. As long as I don't over-identify as, not being interested in exercise,